We're back for our third season with the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings.
Shaper Ranking!
We have a two-time defending Shaper of the Year, CT Shaper of the Year, in Matt Biolos and Lost Surfboards. They're back with another healthy team. Just a quick reminder for folks on how we do this. It is a combined men's and women's ranking. We count all the surfers' finishes from the quarterfinals or better. The Shapers then receive the same rankings points that correlate to their respective surfer finishes. So the higher the surfer places, the more points that Shaper receives. And we are going to track it from pipeline through the final event of the season in Tahiti and get ourselves a winner. In a lot of sports, Mitch, off-season this discourse is often as, if not more interesting than in-season discourse, because people get fascinated with the trade news. They're like, who's going where, who's got what contract, who's getting dropped, who's getting added. Have there been really any significant changes in the makeup of the world's best shapers on the CT in 2025 from what you can see?
Yes, there have. There's been two, and they're both on the women's side. Bettylou Sakura Johnson, she's over with Mayhem now, which came to a huge surprise to both of us. We were talking about it on our WhatsApp thread, and
That's right.
I actually thought that she was going to go to Pyzel. She surfed a good amount of events on Pyzel surfboards last year, and to me, they looked particularly great. The clips that I've been seeing off of the Mayhems, though, she looks awesome. Of course, a fantastic addition to Lost Team, but Brisa Hennessy moving over to the Channel Islands surfboards after riding them over at the finals. I think it's not only a big addition for them, I feel like they're going to add in a lot of points with Lakey Peterson coming back onto the championship tour full time too. So they're going to have two big contenders right there. Channel Islands, of course, Mayhem still the person to beat. Sharpeye though, sneaky link right there. Filipe coming back. Of course, you have Johanne Defay, Tati right now, who's, by the way, no longer working with Coach Ross Williams.
Saw that.
Yeah, they went separate ways. And I actually think for Ross, this kind of benefits him. Less people to work with, focuses more on Bettylou and, of course, John being his number one priority. But just going back to the actual board builders, though, Jason Stevenson and JS, Marco Mignot is on tour. Darren Handley, he's got Joel Vaughan and much more company with Isabella Nichols back on the championship tour. And, of course, if Stephanie Gilmore does return full-time, that's a big addition to DHD, Dave.
Great notes. One thing that we've talked about the last few years, of course, it's not all apples to oranges, right? Like there are kind of three directional tiers within the shaping labels that represent the world's best surfers on the championship tour. You kind of have your bigger teams that have, 9, 10 surfers. You got sort of those mid-level teams at 3 or 4, and then you got a bunch that are just, 1 or 2. And we've had so many conversations around like, well, is that super fair? And, should it just be the best 1 surfer, the best 2 surfer from each program? And we obviously considered that. But what we do want to factor in is that none of these teams have a set limit of a minimum or maximum amount of surfers. The surfers themselves, the world's best surfers, have agency in where they're choosing to go to. And if more surfers are gravitating towards certain programs, we want to kind of reflect that in the data. And so that's why we do it the way we do it. But one of the things I've noticed heading into 2025 is those 3 tiers have kind of shifted more into two broad ones, right? Like there's not really any programs that are in that like 3 to 4 surfer range. Like JS has got 5, he's probably on the lower side, but Channel Islands with 9, DHD with 7, Sharpeye with 10, Mayhem with 9, like they're all in that same space. And then the other 8 or 10 shapers on tour all just kind of have 1 surfer to it. For those programs, like they can have awesome success that way. I mean, look at Chris Borst with Caity Simmers or Timmy Patterson with Italo Ferreira. And I mean, even John Pyzel, 2 surfers, and John Florence and Tyler Wright. Like every shaper is going to have a different approach to this, but it is interesting to see talent move around and to see those tiers kind of evolve into from 3 to 2 spaces. But we talked about Mayhem. We talked about Matt Biolos and Lost, 2-time winner. Mitch, you're very familiar with not only those surfboards, but with their entire program. I think Gian Bernini, their team manager, deserves a ton of credit. He takes his job super seriously, and it's shown. What do you think has to happen in 2025 for any of these other programs to really challenge Lost at this point? I know some of them have comparable sizes, but just in terms of results, like what are you thinking could happen?
Well, first things first, I do have to give a major thank you to Gian Bernini. Always gets me my boards on time, but there's been something they've been working on. I have a new model that hasn't come out yet that I'm test driving for them a little bit. It works real good. That's all I can say right now, but check into Lost Surfboards on social media to catch up, with all of their activities, because I think it's going to be a real good model, and especially for the bigger guys, they're going to like it. For other programs to be as successful as Mayhem, one thing in particular is that they have the best proving ground out of all of them. I mean, they just go to lowers and use that wave over and over again, and you have top 15 surfers, top 10 surfers, number 3 in the world like Griffin Colapinto. Caroline Marks has been a world champion before. Aaron Brooks right now. You have a multitude of surfers that come from a variety of backgrounds for multiple different waves, and then they can use that expertise at one wave in particular, at lower trestles. So it goes to show you that at that one wave in particular, they can showcase many different sides of surfing on the same board, on the same shape, maybe a different model, but it all comes down to the one wave, and it's repetition and repetition and repetition. What did Mick do when he was most successful at lowers, Dave? He was riding Mayhems. He knew it. Same thing with Julian Wilson. Channel Islands just up the road in Santa Barbara. Kelly had a lot of success with those boards over there because they're right here homebred in Southern California. So I think the main thing is just having a wave that resonates with something like lower trestles. You see it over there in Snapper Rocks with DHD and JS, but it's not as high performance and it's not as consistent as we see lowers be. So to me, that's really the biggest facet out of their game. They have a lot of those great surfers because they come from that great area. But I also want to say that in San Diego, where Marcia Zuvi and the Sharpeye team are, they have a lot of consistency at great waves too. Seaside Reef over there with Taylor Clark. They have a young up-and-coming crew that's real good too, and Levi Slauson and company. I just don't think it's as consistent and as marketable as you normally see with a lot of the guys over there at Lost Surfboards.
That's interesting, because I think even just looking at those surfboard labels, like you called out, the consistency of lower trestles is one of the best tuning grounds for high-performance surfboards. Obviously, Matt Biolos and Lost Surfboards are based there. You mentioned Sharpeyes in San Diego, but they're close enough. Like you could consider lowers as an option for them as well. And then Channel Islands being just up the road, but also having Rincon virtually in their backyard. When Rincon's on, it's an awesome test track, right? And then we talk about the other bigger programs like DHD and JS. For sure, like consistency is going to vary, but the wave at Miguel, make sure you bleep that out. High performance, and then obviously Snapper Rocks is not dissimilar to Rincon, just more consistent, right?
Yeah.
So it is like a great highlight on maybe the most high performance boards have to have that kind of test track just to get consistency, not just at waves like lower trestles or like Snapper Rocks, but really anywhere in the world. So yeah, it's a good insight. Do you have any preseason predictions? Like if there is a team to really make a run at Lost, who do you think it's going to be?
Well, of course, I think JS is the one that's always looming in the background. If I don't mention Channel Islands, I think Britt's going to kill me the next time I see him. And Britt's a big guy, so I got to mention Channel Islands right there too. But I actually think it's going to be Jason Stevenson and JS Industries. I like their team a lot. I think with the addition of Miggy and Sammy full-time, they've got a real strong team, especially over there at Snapper Rocks and in Tahiti, where each one of those brothers has won before in the past. But, of course, the addition of Marco Mignot is a big thing, too. Can't forget about the success that Ryan Callanan has had throughout the entirety of the calendar year on the Championship Tour. So, to me, they're sleepers, really. I think they can resonate real big, especially at venues like Abu Dhabi, too. And, of course, no slouches at Pipeline. Those guys have done super well. Ramsey Bukiam last year defeated Jack Robinson, who had won the event the year before. So a lot of those guys on their team, they're sleeper picks, and they can barrel ride, they can throw in the air just like anybody else on tour. So they're definitely those guys that if you're not careful, they're going to moving up into the top 3 of the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings, maybe even taking number 1 after an event.
I like it. I think last year they were like my prospect spicy pick to keep an eye on in that second tier, where it's like, man, they've got the talent. They've obviously got the boards. We'll see if they can move up. I think, just looking at the number discrepancy this year, like, it wouldn't just be the JS team having a lot of success. It would be the Lost team also having to struggle a bit, just based on their numbers and the balance of men and women they have on that program. So look, like, I think, geez, this is really tough. I think I do want to give credit to Channel Islands. Like, they've buoyed their team. They've added, like a CT winner already in rookie Johanne Defay on the women's side. And the boards are going awesome. Like, we've seen the boards go well in Hawaii. We've seen the boards go well at lower trestles. We've seen the boards go incredible in beach breaks. So I think that could be like a real step function program this year. And then DH, we've talked about, they're very dangerous. If Steph Gilmore returns, that could be a huge asset. And then Sharpeye, their program has been so impressive over the last few years, and they had to go without Filipe Toledo in 2024. He's going to be back in 2025. So, geez, I'm not going to pick a group because I feel like I just picked everybody anyway. But interesting times. We will find out. And we'll also find out, too, like similar to last year, how much Hawaiian lumber the world's best surfers have under their feet at Pipeline. Last year we saw Pipeline and Sunset Beach, but plenty of people on Pangs, plenty of people on Arakawas and Tokoros. We'll be interested to see what it looks like this year if surfers are continuing to utilize that local shaping knowledge for a venue like Pipeline, or if, these global brands, they're continuing to refine more specialized equipment for venues like that.
So I got a question for you. Hot topic. Is Filipe still the number 1 rider for Sharpeye, or has Jack Robinson overtaken him?
I mean, I think in 2025, across all cultures and industries and peoples, the line is, what have you done for me lately? And so with that in mind, it's Felipe's to get back, but it's probably Jack, right? I mean, Jack's been their guy last year. Jack is ascendant. Filipe could get this thing back within an event. He's that talented.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if that event is Pipeline, which is the venue that he withdrew not just from the event, but from the entire season a year ago for 2024. Any thoughts on this? I mean, one of the things that he said in stepping away from the tour was he wanted to spend time, at waves like Tahiti, at waves like Pipeline. I didn't see a ton of that free surfing wise, saw a little bit of it. Performed very well in Tahiti, I thought, during the Olympics, which was obviously a big focus for him last year, up until a point. Haven't seen a whole lot else of him. Haven't seen him in Hawaii early season. Have you heard anything on the ground in Orange County, Mitch? And just what do you think about Felipe's return to full-time CT competition at the venue where he withdrew in 2024?
I haven't really heard too much of him, and I've seen Brett Simpson, who's the team manager at Hurley now, quite a bit lately. And, I haven't actually even asked him anything about Phil. But the things that I have heard, a few months ago was that he was in great health. He was surfing. He was happy. And I think that's the most dangerous aspect of Filipe is that when he's happy and when he's on point, he is the most high-performance surfer on the planet. And especially with Abu Dhabi being on the schedule, he's no doubt number 1 on the list to win that event. J-Bay, best surfer there. Snapper, he's won there before. Margs, he's won there before. So all those right-handers, all those reef breaks that are going to be rippable, he's still probably the guy to beat. When it comes to boards, though, and you ask me what everybody else can do outside of Mayhem to be successful, look at how well structured Mayhem is with their tiers, and especially with how diverse their team is globally. We all know that their number 1 guy is Griffin, especially being from right there at Lowers and San Clemente. He's their guy right now. Just behind him, Yagodora. Just behind him, Cole Hauschman, Crosby, Colapinto. So you have multiple North Americans. You have a Brazilian, you have a lot of guys in Australia that are successful for the same brand. And now look at what Sharpeye's done. Once they were able to get Jack, they took way more pressure off Phil, put some on the Australian surfers. Now you're getting the European surfers with Johanne Defay. Of course, you have a lot of other guys like Real Wida coming up through the program too. And of course, got to say Jake Marshall, my guy. He's been doing great for the last few years on the CT too. So that's really what it's going to take to be able to diversify your team, make sure that things are marketable, and then you get to a wave like Lowers and explode, make a big social media presence. You're selling a lot of boards, especially when you have tons of different models like we see from both Mayhem and Sharpeye. I feel like that's something that Channel Islands has probably got to work on pretty soon. But since we don't see them that often because we're not in Australia, JS, DHD, those guys sell a lot of boards over there back home overseas. Right here in Southern California, JS has a garage in Oceanside. I know they do quite well. Brett and Riley, Heath Walker, those guys run that thing great over there. But when it comes to kind of trying to outperform the local guys, it's hard to beat that local produce, Dave. You go into Trader Joe's, you know what you're getting. You go over to Lost Surfboards, you know that you're getting the Driver 3.0, you're getting the Sub-Driver 2.0 because it works magic. You don't want to go for another brand because you don't know what to expect. You get what I'm saying?
You could have spilled the name of your special model there. Miguel would have bleeped it out. That's fine.
He's going to ask it back. He's going to ask for it back.
I think it's a really good point. I mean, it's not just the diversification of the models, right? But you're naming the surfers on the Lost team right now. You got Griffin Colapinto, who's this like all-around high-performance like phenom. You got Iago Dora, arguably one of the most stylish surfers on the planet. Mm-hmm. Incredible tube rider, incredible aerialist, incredible everything. And then he's going to be a tour sophomore in 2025, but the big hammer, right? Cole Hausman. And they're very different surfers. So to your point, it's like there's a diversity of shapes. There's also a diversity of like the kind of surfer that he has at the elite level. It's almost like constructing like a football team or a basketball team where it's like, I don't need 11 quarterbacks or I don't need 5 centers. It's like,
great reference.
I need like all around excellent surfers, but I need them to have different strengths, right? Mm-hmm. Where if power surfing's in today, like Cole's got an advantage. If it's, style and barrel riding, Iago's got the advantage. If it's, fin-free aerials, maybe Griffin's got the advantage. They're all within the range. They could all do it all, of course, but it's like, it does feel like there's pretty distinct identities in the Lost Avengers there.
Dude, identities. That's like the perfect way to describe it. I'm looking at the women's top 10. Caroline Marks, very different surfer to Gabby Bryan, to Sawyer Limblad, to Sakura. And now you add in Aaron Brooks into the mix for the Mayhem team too. A lot of diversity right there. Just with those 5 surfers alone. Now you have Sharpeye, Tati, Joanne, 2 very different surfers, one goofy, one regular. They match up quite a bit too. So that's not good for their team. They're kind of in that kind of tier where you're either super high ranked or you're kind of at the bottom, and then you have to eventually match up against each other. But when you look at Channel Islands, they made a huge move with Brisa Hennessy because outside of, really, Bella Kenworthy, Vahine, and Lakey, they didn't have anybody in the top 10. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a big move for them. And Brisa is one of the most consistent surfers on the planet. Just like at the last 2 seasons that she's had, she's been on fire. All she really needs is to win a world championship now.
Yeah, I did know this, but you just listing off like 4 women out of the top 17 are Channel Islands team riders in 2025. That's a change.
Yeah.
So, well, we are excited. We're going to geek out on board talk all season long. We appreciate Vissla and the CT Shaper Rankings for letting us do so.